Berlin, April 1945. The city is in ruins. Soviet artillery pounds the streets, and deep underground, in a bunker beneath all the chaos, Adolf Hitler is about to take his own life. The war is coming to an end, but for Hitler's bodyguards, it doesn't end there. This is the story of the men who witnessed the final hours of the Third Reich, and what happened to them after the war was over. History often highlights the major players while overlooking those who stood silently beside them. 4 men in particular remained closest to Adolf Hitler during these final days of the Third Reich, holding positions that offered unprecedented access to one of history's most infamous figures. Their ordinary backgrounds sharply contrasted with their extraordinary proximity to power, proximity that would ultimately shape their post-war fate. Rochus Misch, Otto Gunsche, Johann Rattenhuber, and Heinz Linge, 4 seemingly ordinary men, became guardians of Hitler's daily existence, unassuming sentinels stationed at history's darkest threshold. Orphaned at a young age, his father killed in World War I and his mother lost to pneumonia, Rochus Misch joined the SS Verfügungstruppe in 1937. His selection for Hitler's personal bodyguard unit brought him into the dictator's inner circle. As Hitler's telephone operator and courier, Misch served as a vital communications lifeline, especially during moments of crisis. He stayed by Hitler's side until the very end in the Berlin bunker. Otto Gunsche joined the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler at age 16 and became a Nazi Party member in 1934. He served as Hitler's SS adjutant during 2 periods, 1940 to 1941, and again from January 1943 until April 1945, gaining combat experience in between. As a member of the Führerbegleitkommando, Gunsche regularly attended military conferences. In the end, Hitler entrusted him with a grim final task: to burn his body after his death, a responsibility that would make Gunsche a high-priority target for Allied investigators. A trained Munich police officer, Johann Rattenhuber, was appointed head of Hitler's Reich Security Service bodyguard unit in 1933. He coordinated Hitler's personal protection during public events and travel, working alongside the Führerbegleitkommando while maintaining overall command. His expertise extended to securing Hitler's various headquarters, including the infamous Wolf's Lair. As the eldest of the 4, Rattenhuber retained senior authority throughout the war. Originally a bricklayer, Heinz Linge joined the SS in 1933 and became Hitler's valet 2 years later, eventually rising to chief valet in 1939. His daily duties included waking Hitler, delivering newspapers and messages, and handling personal needs. By 1944, Linge oversaw the entire personal service staff, giving him an unmatched overview into Hitler's most private routines. As Berlin crumbled in late April 1945, Hitler's inner circle faced the undeniable reality of defeat. The Soviet army tightened its grip on the capital with relentless bombing and shelling, reducing the city to rubble. Inside the Führer bunker, Hitler's death on April 30th triggered a desperate scramble as those remaining tried to flee the advancing Red Army. The 4 men closest to Hitler suddenly found themselves entangled in the final, chaotic collapse of the Third Reich. The Soviets approached the capture of high-ranking Nazis with brutal urgency, markedly different from the methodical, evidence-driven approach of the Americans and British. While Western forces prepared for legal prosecution, Soviet Smersh counterintelligence units hunted down anyone who might know the truth about Hitler's fate. Stalin, gripped by paranoia and suspicion, drove his operatives to pursue Hitler's inner circle with relentless intensity. In those final, frantic hours, as Soviet troops closed in, each man's fate was sealed. Rochus Misch, Hitler's loyal radio operator and bodyguard, tried to slip away through the ruins of Berlin. Disguised in civilian clothes, he briefly evaded detection until he was captured near Seestrasse. His insider knowledge of the Führer's communications made him an immediate target for intense Soviet interrogation. Otto Gunsche faced even graver circumstances. As the SS officer entrusted with the grim task of burning Hitler's body, a final order to prevent any public display, Gunsche carried first-hand proof of the dictator's death. His capture handed the Soviets the very man who had set the fire to the physical remains of their most infamous enemy. Johann Rattenhuber, head of the Reich Security Service, was considered a major intelligence prize. Captured by Smersh units, he was immediately pressed for details about Hitler's security protocols and final movements. As the most senior of the 4, Rattenhuber faced intense questioning about the very theories Stalin clung to: escape tunnels, body doubles, and conspiracies that refused to die. Heinz Linge possessed deep knowledge of Hitler's daily routines as his personal valet. Soviet interrogators mined his understanding of the dictator's habits, medications, and inner circle, seeking not just to verify the death, but to map out the remnants of the Nazi leadership. brutal interrogations produced vital testimony that helped piece together the timeline of the bunker's final days. Yet publicly, the Soviet leadership maintained doubt about Hitler's death, an ambiguity they used for strategic leverage. The statements from these men, extracted under harsh conditions, would later form essential primary resources for historians. For these four men, capture was only the beginning. Their years in Soviet hands would test their endurance in ways Hitler's service never had, with each subjected to drastically different treatment depending on their perceived intelligence value. The captivity of Hitler's inner circle exposed the sharp divide between Soviet and Western Allied approaches to Nazi prisoners. While the West held formal, legal proceedings culminating in the Nuremberg trials, the Soviet Union favored prolonged imprisonment aimed at intelligence gathering and retribution. These four men became entangled in that system where their fates hinged less on personal guilt and more on Soviet strategic priorities. Imprisonment under the Soviets meant a grim rotation through facilities tailored for high-value Nazi captives, marked by intense questioning, psychological pressure, and physical hardship. Compared to their counterparts captured by the West, these men often received harsher, more arbitrary sentences without trials, without timelines, and without clear outcomes. Rochus Misch spent 8 years in Soviet captivity following his arrest in Berlin. He was taken to Moscow's infamous Lubyanka prison, where interrogators questioned him relentlessly about Hitler's final hours. Though his role had been minor compared to top officials, the psychological strain was severe. He remained imprisoned until May 1953, long after many thought such a low-ranking figure would be released. Otto Gunsche's 10 years in Soviet hands held greater strategic value. He had carried out Hitler's final order. He was shuttled between NKVD Special Camp No. 48 Sverdlovsk, Vladimir Central Prison, and finally Bautzen in East Germany before his release in May 1956. During his imprisonment, Gunsche became a central source for Operation Myth, a secret biography of Hitler prepared for Stalin, evidence of the Soviet leader's enduring obsession with his fallen enemy. Johann Rattenhuber received the harshest sentence of all, despite his age and declining health. In 1952, the court-martial of the Moscow Military District handed down a 25-year sentence. He was already in his 60s. The punishment underscored the Soviet system's indifference to age or circumstance. Released in October 1955, Rattenhuber returned to West Germany a broken man, dying just 2 years later in Munich. Heinz Linge spent 10 years in Soviet custody, his deep familiarity with Hitler's personal habits making him a valuable asset to Soviet intelligence. Like Gunsche, he contributed to Stalin's secret Hitler biography, navigating the fine line between resistance and strategic cooperation in order to survive. Stalin's death in 1953 and changing relations between the Soviet Union and West Germany helped lead to their eventual freedom. The Germany that awaited Hitler's former bodyguards after their release from Soviet captivity barely resembled the one they had known. Now split into East and West, the nation operated under opposing ideologies, with very different ways of confronting its Nazi past. In the East, the communist regime cast itself as fascism's sworn enemy, while the West took a slower, more conflicted path toward historical reckoning. These political divides shaped how the four men re-entered society and whether they ever spoke of their pasts. When Rochus Misch returned to East Germany in 1953, he found a society that officially condemned his past. He quickly relocated to West Berlin, where the political climate allowed for quiet reinvention. There he opened a painting and wallpapering business and spoke little of his wartime role. In the East, they would have made my life difficult, he later recalled. But as West Germany's public conversation about the Nazi era evolved, so did Misch's willingness to speak. By the 1990s, he had become the most vocal of Hitler's former bodyguards, describing Hitler as a normal man, while consistently distancing himself from the regime's crimes. He died in 2013 at the age of 96. Otto Gunsche took a different path after his 1956 release. He settled in West Germany and built a quiet career in industrial sales, keeping his past firmly out of public view. Despite having carried out Hitler's final order, arguably the most significant of the four, Gunsche remained almost entirely silent. His discretion allowed him to rebuild a low-profile civilian life, reflecting West Germany's early willingness to accept former Nazi personnel who stayed out of sight. He died in 2003. Johann Rattenhuber had the briefest post-war life of the four. Released in 1955 after 10 years in Soviet prisons, he returned to Munich in failing health. The oldest member of Hitler's security detail had little time or energy to adjust to freedom. He died in 1957, leaving behind few records and a notable gap in first-hand accounts of Hitler's security operations. Heinz Linge struck a balance between silence and disclosure. After his 1955 release to West Germany, he eventually published a memoir titled Until the Fall in 1980, offering rare insights into Hitler's daily life from the vantage point of his valet. "I was a witness, not a politician," he stated in one rare interview. He died that same year in Hamburg. Nearly 3 decades later, in July 2009, his memoir was re-released in English under the title With Hitler to the End, becoming a key source for understanding the dictator's final years. The accounts of these 4 men stand as essential historical documents for understanding Hitler's final days. Their testimonies, preserved through Soviet interrogations or later interviews, provide rare glimpses into Hitler's private world that would otherwise remain unknown. These bodyguards became entangled with extraordinary historical moments, their lives continuing beyond their employer's death. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching. We hope you found this video informative, and if you enjoyed learning about today's topic, make sure to check out our video What Happened to the Wives and Children of Nazi Leaders After World War II. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on more World War II content, and we will see you in the next one.